Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Begin our service on page 11.
This is it. You've made it to the last Shabbat of 2018. Some of us didn't think the world would make it, but we're here. Cause for gratitude and thanks. Prayers capture the complexity of human emotions. They're poetry, and if we recognize that at some point in history, somebody wrote them. They came from someone's imagination. They came from someone's desire to express some deep yearning in their heart, something that perhaps was just beyond their grasp. But they're prayers, they're poetry rather, and they're meant to inspire, and they're meant to capture not dogma, not the absolute reflection of how the world is, but perhaps how we'd like the world to be or how we imagine the world to be. So if you continue on page 8, you'll see just such a prayer. Someone wrote this prayer, probably not that long ago because this book is pretty new. And in its words, it captures, or the author hoped to capture the aspirations, the hopes, the yearnings of a Jewish community. Let's read it together. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in our Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. Page 24, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom, Malachei HaShoret, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Melech haolam, asher kirishanu Hakadosh, 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 Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu.
The Chadodi is on page 20. You're familiar with the custom that we practice on the last verse. We rise, and when we say Boi v'shalom, Boi chala, Boi chala, we bow to the left and to the right, and we welcome the Shabbat bride. In the mystical practice, the mystics really imagine what it is that they're welcoming, what it is they're bringing in when they bring in Shabbat. And so we can't lose sight of the fact that it is the last Friday night, the last Shabbat of 2018. So as you face the doors and as you bow to the left and the right, what is it you're saying goodbye to? What is it you want to leave behind you of the last year, and what is it you're saying hello to? What is it you're welcoming? What is it you're trying to do more of? What is it you're trying to bring into the world in the year ahead? We have Rosh Hashanah. We do that the first time around as Jews when the year changes for us in the Hebrew calendar. We get a second chance with January 1st. So as we sing L'Chadodi, I'll give you the signal to rise. We'll face the doors. And as the Cantor sings and as you bow, what are you saying goodbye to? What are you welcoming? Page 20, page 20.
L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, ish mi'anu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet, v'li tehillah. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki b'kora b'racha. Merosh mikerem lesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tzola. Tochem u'nei am segula, boi chala, boi chala. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela. L'Chadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat lekabela.
Page 28.
Yael haelai, yael haelai, yael haelai, yael haelai, yael haelai, yael haelai, yael
page 31, bottom of the page. Let's read together. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Harafi.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed.
Be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40. page 42.
Hashkifenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu Shomreinu L'chaim Hashkifenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu Shomreinu L'chaim Ufrosolenu Ufrosolenu Sukkot Shlomecha Ufrosolenu Ufrosolenu Sukkot Shlomecha Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu Shomreinu L'chaim Hashkifenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu Shomreinu L'chaim.
Before we continue with page 44, just take a look at page 45, the top of the page. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time.
V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש.
That melody is called the Baghdad melody. And I don't know why that is. Cantor, do you know why it's called the Baghdad melody?
It's a melody that comes all the way from Baghdad, and you can hear, if you know a little bit about music, it's in a major mode, which is very, what? Does it make you...
It's not Ashkenazi. Ashkenazis do minor, right?
Well, we do minor, we do major too. On Shabbat we do both, but major is such a happy, and if you want to use Ashkenazi terms, freilich feeling. So it's really a melody for Ki Shmara Shabbat, but Roger and I moved it also to Vishamru to bring alive the joyful text of Vishamru, which allows us to celebrate Shabbat more fully.
So is it a couple hundred years old?
It says here on my sheet music 12th century, so who knows how accurate that is. because a lot of the music from the 12th century or before was all passed down orally. So some of those are guesstimates for when we wrote them down.
There you have it. Now you know. Page 253. If someone close to you is ill, hold thoughts of them in your heart as we sing this blessing of comfort, peace, and healing. Middle of page 253. On page 46, you'll find the opening meditation to the Amidah, the prayer that we recite individually standing. And on the left side, on page 47, you'll see reflections on its opening words. You could never leave that page. You could just read 47 and reflect on what it means to pray in this world, what it means to have a sense of God in one's heart, what it means to somehow let that sense of God animate one's life. And it's a great way, I think, to frame a prayer that gives us a moment to reflect, to be conscious of our own personal space, to maybe continue the thoughts about how 2018 is ending, how we'd like 2019 to continue, and basically just to take a moment that takes us out of this communal experience and puts us into our own space of prayer. So we begin on 46, we end on 62, or you can read the words on either page, either the traditional Hebrew or the prayer interpretations. And when you're finished, you can be seated. Please rise.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
page 258. For our country, together. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have, by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation, and alert to the care of the earth.
May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country sound in body and spirit. Amen. Avinu Shabbat Service.
Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. Here's the way it works for some of us, I imagine. As your car drives up the hill, or as you have to walk out of your front door to get into your car to drive up the hill, you're probably thinking, really? It's a long drive, there's traffic, it's up the hill, it's like you have to walk up the hill. And then you walk in, and you hear the music, and the words are inspirational, and you say, I should really come more often. And then next Friday you say, the traffic, and what can you do? That's who we are, us people. So I'm going to tell you a little story about when I was 16 years old on my first trip to Israel. It was with a young Judea teen tour. The highlight of the tour was the walk through what was called Hezekiah's Tunnel. Has anybody done that walk through Hezekiah's Tunnel? It's about 583 yards long, and it's carved in the Jerusalem bedrock. It's about 5 feet high, 2 feet wide or so, and fresh water from one of Jerusalem's wells runs through the tunnel in its serpentine path and comes out at what's called the Siloam pool or the Shiloh pool. And when you walk in, you're in fresh water, fresh flowing water right from out of the ground. And sometimes it's up to your ankles, sometimes it's up to your knees, never much above that. And it's one of Jerusalem's popular off-the-beaten-track tourist attractions, so to speak. Now, when I was younger, at 16, in my less claustrophobic days, I had no problem just ducking my head and walking into that tunnel knowing that there were people ahead of me, people behind me, and that I was essentially trapped in the tunnel. But about 10 years ago, I took a temple trip with a bunch of folks, and I watched as the people in front of me walked into the tunnel, and I remembered my 16-year-old days, and I kind of bent down, looked in, and I said, there is no something way that I'm going in that tunnel. And I turned right around and I let everybody else go. It's an amazing tunnel. It was cut into the stone 2,800 years ago. And it carries water from that spring, the Gihon spring, into the pool, as I said. It runs underneath the boundaries of the ancient city of Jerusalem. And until I studied biblical archaeology more, I didn't understand how this tunnel that I walked in, where I entered far away from what I knew was the city of Jerusalem, and I exited far from what I knew was the city of Jerusalem, could in any way, shape, or form be associated with the city of Jerusalem. But in fact, what's happened over the centuries, Jerusalem has migrated north. So originally that tunnel was actually under the streets of the old city of Jerusalem, which was south of the current city. And it was built by the Israelite king Hezekiah probably about 701 BCE. And the goal was to survive the siege of that ancient city by the Assyrians who were marching down from the north. That's an incredible feat of engineering. Even today, it's an incredible feat of engineering. But think about 2,800 years ago, the excavators started from either end. And they chiseled their way, no electronic, no diesel-powered chiselers, hands, hammers on chisels, chiseled their way through to the stone to each other. And in a time before GPS and radar and radios, they actually found each other. And halfway through, you can actually see the spot where they met because they kind of missed by a few feet, and they had to find it, and so the tunnel kind of does a sharp turn. And there actually was a plaque on the wall of the tunnel that was only discovered centuries later that was a dedicatory plaque. Didn't say who built it, but it said, we found each other. Basically, it's what after all this digging, we found each other. King Hezekiah, this suggested order, the one who ordered the building of this tunnel, was one of the great Jewish kings. He reigned for 29 years. Not only did he build the water tunnel, but he also strengthened monotheism in his time. He destroyed the ancient places of idol worship that were scattered all around the land of Israel. He fought the Philistines famous for the story of David and Goliath. He actually did fight them. He restored the observance of Passover, and I don't think Seder, because the Seder had not yet been invented. Apparently, the sacrificial observance of Passover had fallen off in his time. He brought it back. He successfully defended Israel against Assyria. His water tunnel actually did the trick, and he was a great political leader. So why is this the first time that most of you are hearing about him? If you haven't gone through the tunnel, and you haven't studied Bible with me, then you probably haven't heard of Hezekiah. But he was only one of Israel's kings. There are actually 41 mentioned in the Bible. In fact, I brought a Bible to just demonstrate. This is the Torah. It starts at this end of the Bible. And this much of the Torah is dedicated to stories about Moses. Right here, that's Moses. This much is about kings. So here's the thicker part of the Bible you can see. So 41 kings spanning about 500 years. And then later, a couple hundred years later, there are another 10 Jewish kings descended from the Maccabees. One of those kings was actually not a king, she was a queen. So there was one Jewish king. Anybody know her name? Salome Alexandra. Why is this the first time you're hearing about this? One of the great Jewish kings in the Maccabean Hasmonean dynasty. So all told, there were 51 Jewish and Israelite kings that reigned over Israel and Judah. That's a total of 650 years of Jewish self-rule. So why don't we hear about these kings in the synagogue? Why don't we have holidays dedicated to this time of Jewish self-rule? Why don't we celebrate their accomplishments? Why don't we mourn their shortcomings? There's no holiday dedicated to them. There are no prayers, except for one, David. But when we talk about King David, we don't talk about his reign. We actually only talk about him because the rabbis came along 1,000 years later and connected David to the Messiah. And so when we mention David's name, anytime you hear David or David in the prayers, it's about the rabbinic view of the Messiah. So 650 years of monarchies, 650 years of governance of the land of Israel, 650 years of autonomy, of nation buildings, of wars, of defeats, of victories, and Jewish rituals don't say a word about it. Not a word. Other than the destruction of the temple, but then kings aren't really mentioned. So what's the story that we hear about in synagogue? What's the story that we observe through the holidays? Slavery. 400 years worth of homelessness, of poverty, of servitude. A story of crossing the sea, which happened exactly once, according to the Torah. Desert wandering, which spanned 40 years, according to the Torah. And that's the story, and the reason I'm talking about that is because that's what the book that we begin this week. It's the book of Exodus. And that book covers that one desert crossing, that one water crossing, 40 years in the desert, and it tells the story of Moses. And the theme of the next holiday coming up, of course, reflects the story of that book, Passover. It's a theme that is captured every Shabbat, in the prayers of Shabbat, we talk about remembering the Exodus from Egypt. It's a theme of two more significant Jewish holidays, of Shavuot, which remembers the story of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai in the desert, and the story of Sukkot, which is about desert wandering. So how is it that we have all of those holidays, all of those readings, all of those rituals that talk about that short span of Israelite memory, and Jewish worship is silent when it comes to the great span of time that the kings occupied? How can it be? Well, because nearly every single reigning monarch, that monarch's incumbency is marred by misconduct at best and often an inglorious demise. Whether it's the corruption of the monarch himself, and there were many corrupt monarchs written about in the Bible, or regicide, the way that monarch is deposed, or fratricide, when the brother comes along and kills the king who happens to be his brother, or rape, yes, there's rape in the stories of the kings, or graft, or unethical conscription of soldiers, or excessive taxation, yes, they complain about taxation back then as well, or wasteful spending, yes, they did that too, or catastrophic failure. As an example, there was a king named Josiah. Have you heard of him? He was a great king also. He became a king when he was 8 years old. He came to power in about 620 BCE. And it's his sages that we think discovered or wrote the book of Deuteronomy, at least an early version of it. They brought law and order back to the Jewish community. They restored Moses' law as they saw it. They tore the idols out of the hands of the heretical Israelites. And yet, when King Josiah, now he's about 39 years of age, when he marched out to defend Israel against the invading Egyptian armies, he was killed. And when his son, Jehoahaz, another king, ascended the throne, this one didn't have such a glorious reign, he reverted to the heretical ways, brought the idols back into Jerusalem, and the Bible doesn't look too kindly on him. So the story of these kings, it never appears in holidays or prayers because the essential truth about the human exercise of power, of government, of autonomy, of the attempt to realize our aspirations is that we rarely live up to our own hopes. That's the truth. That the hopes that a nation might place in its leaders rarely are realized by the governed. Usually the rulers fall short of their own goals. And that's the reality of the messiness of human self-rule. We rarely reach the idealized hopes. In contrast, that short section of the Torah tells the story of Moses, a very different leader in the Torah's eyes. Moses' story is an idealized account of the perfect leader. As Exodus tells it, Moses transmits the divine will directly to the people, untrammeled by any of his selfish desires. Moses favors neither the rich nor the poor, we're told. He doesn't accumulate wealth himself, unlike those kings who accumulated plenty. Moses is selflessly virtuous. His only goal, Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy say, is the good of the people. The Torah even says there's no one as humble or as virtuous as he. In the Torah's estimation, Moses is the perfect leader because he is God's perfect partner. He leads slaves to freedom, the vanquished to victory, the trod upon to triumph. That's Moses. So why is that story of the perfect, idealized leader at the center of the narrative and not the stories of those imperfect kings? Because Moses' story is a story of hope. And Moses' story is a story of idealism. It's a story of vision, and it's a story of virtue. It's a story of selfless leadership, of an egoless love for his flock. And indeed, that's the leader that any of the governed aspires to. But unfortunately, those flawed and failed kings are the truth. That's the reality we live in. With each leader, we aspire for greatness, but here's what we know. Victories are short-lived and failures are frequent. So we tell the story of Moses in the synagogue. We tell the story of Moses at Passover. We read the story of Moses in the Torah because it's a story of human hopefulness in the face of discouragement. We will always confront failed and failing human leadership. We will always live in a society that falls short even of our own ideals. We will always be disappointed by the shortcomings of any human undertaking. That's the way it is. But the Exodus story that we tell is in our prayers because it's a timeless story of hopefulness. The prayers are about hope. The story is about vision. The mission is about aspiration. So the prayer reminds us that if we can tell the story of slaves becoming free, if we can tell the story of seas that part, if we can dream of a perfect leader with perfect laws, then we can hold on to the hope that one day that will become a possibility. And we have to hold on to that hope. Hope that one day we'll get it right, that one day tzedek tirdof, that one day the pursuit of justice will reign, that one day truth will prevail. And in the meantime, we tell the story of Moses. We tell the story of redemption, and in its tale of deliverance, we will always hope for our own story of redemption and deliverance. Amen. So here's what I'd like to do for the Kiddush. If you are, I have a suspicion that we have a couple of you here, so I want to recognize you. If you are a graduate of a wise school, whether it's a religious school or the elementary school or the high school, would you come up for Kiddush? I think we had a couple. So you graduated from Milken? Yeah. You graduated from the religious school? Come on, anybody else?
Ooh, lots of girls.
If you don't want to own up to it, you don't have to own up to it. But if you're a graduate of one of our schools, well, oh, look at that. When did you, I'm not going to ask you when you graduated. You have to be a graduate of our school, not Melton. The young people's schools, yeah. So the religious school, the day school, the high school. Oh, we got her. All right. So year of graduation from which school, Lindsay?
Hebrew school.
Okay.
And I don't know what year.
All right.
Milken, oh my God, 2000.
Stephen S. Weiss, I don't know the exact year.
Okay.
Hebrew school and preschool.
Confirmation? Did you confirmation? You didn't. Your picture's not on the wall.
Preschool.
Preschool. All right. The Kiddush is on page 5. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'gafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto v'ratzonu, v'shabbat kodsho ya'amod ratzon hitchilanu, zikaron le'maseh bereishit, ki hu yom techniho v'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'tzion Mitzrayim, ki banu v'chorta, v'yamtanu kidashta, mikol ha'odim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'ahava uvratzon, himotanu, baruch atah Adonai, Mekadosh
It's grape juice. Never fails to disappoint me. All right. The Aleinu is on page 282.
Aleinu l'shameach v'atah v'atah, atenu dunanu v'zivri, she'aseh v'yiratzon, elos amanu, v'nishloach ha'adamah, she'lo samenu ahem, ve'lo rolinu, v'lo amanah,
So as you walked in, you got a couple of things that were placed into your hands. You can pick them up on your way out. We have some wonderful, as always, the year gets started, and there are all kinds of wonderful things coming up. We're hosting Nava Tehillah, the Lachado D that we sang at the beginning of the service, right? I was paying attention. Is one of their pieces. What else do we know that they sing? Anything that people would
We've done it, we have a couple of their works in our repertoire.
Yeah. So they're coming in, it's an Israeli group, right? Yes. They're coming in for a concert on Saturday, the 19th of January. We invite you to join us. On the wrong side of this paper, it describes events that have already happened at this card. On the correct side is what's coming up.
No, there's some.
Oh yeah, there's still some coming up. Okay, good. If you haven't read this book, The Weight of Ink, I strongly recommend it. You read it, right? Great book, great book.
It's
Yeah.
long, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I read it on my Kindle. You never know where you are when you're in your Kindle. So, but it's a good one. So I invite you to come listen to Rachel Kadish talk about her book. It's pronounced Kadish. I understand, not Kaddish, Kadish. But it comes from the word kadosh, holy. It's a derivation of that. We invite you to come and listen to her share her insight, and also to read the book. It's a great book, great read, really good read. Okay, the Kaddish is on page 294. We know that part of the reason that we are gathered here is because we come to memorialize and remember the lives of those who have lived and died. So if you are in the first 30 days of mourning, would you rise so we can recognize your loss? If you're in the first year of mourning, please rise. If you are observing a yard site, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, please rise. Now we all stand beside you as we continue with the Kaddish 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
V'alma divarach cheutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael b'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbi mevarach le'olam u'lamei al-maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yitdaleh v'yithalal shemei kedusha v'richu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, to which we say, Amen. So as we are here on the cusp of 2019, we hold on to optimism. We look back on a year that was, for what was good, for what wasn't so good, and we nonetheless wake up in the morning believing in our hearts that somehow we can do better, knowing, of course, that we face the setbacks, but we tell the story. We tell the story of slaves who seek freedom. We tell the story of Moses who brings guidance. We tell the story of Israelites who wander a desert and ultimately make it to the promised land. That's our story. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. And we hope that we can too count on reaching that promised land, marching together. Amen.
Amen. You can find the words of Oseh Shalom just here at the bottom of the page, 294. Oseh Shalom bimra